Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Intuitive Catalyst podcast. I'm Leilani, your host, and today we are joined with polyamory expert and coach, Aria Diana. Aria is a trauma-informed relationship coach and somatic facilitator, helping individuals practicing non-monogamy deepen self-awareness, overcome insecurities, and enhance communication skills to create more liberated, expansive, and nourishing relationships. She leverages her rich personal journey with more than a decade of polyamorous and non-normative relationships, combined with her professional training in somatics, communication, and trauma therapy to guide others through the sometimes disorienting complexities of non-monogamy. And when I think of Aria, I immediately feel calmer. She does this work through a lens of really understanding our nervous system and what creates dysregulation in our nervous system. So I feel like her energy automatically is just really calming. And I love the way that she breaks down concepts that traditionally may feel very tricky and nuanced in terms of non-monogamy and polyamory. And she does it in a way that is so accessible. I'm so excited to share this episode with you, and especially love the ways that she weaves in her spirituality in how she has navigated this journey of hers. So without further ado, I'm so excited to bring Aria Diana onto the podcast. Aria, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to share space.
The way that we came together was I put something out on social media on Threads, and my listeners by now are like, oh my God, would she shut up about Threads? But I did. And I was like, hey, I'm looking for like an expert in polyamorous relationships and love. And my listeners just heard a little bit about you. And yeah, you were just like, hey, that's me. I'll do that. And at the intersection of like spirituality. So I'm so excited. You're the first poly expert to be on the show. So welcome.
Thank you so much. So pleased to be here with you.
I know. So I always start with the same question, Aria. So who are you? What is your big work in the world? And how do you source from your intuition to do your work?
So I'm Aria Diana. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in the San Francisco East Bay. The work that I do in the world is really helping non-monogamous and polyamorous people develop more inner capacity, confidence, and communication skills to be able to create the relationship structures that most work for them outside of the way we were taught that relationships have to look. I really encourage people to bring in a lot of creativity and intention in that journey. And for me, it's been a long journey of like healing and unlearning and peeling back all these layers around expectations and shame and how I was taught to relate. And yeah, the way I source from my intuition is, I have a daily meditation and gratitude practice, and I think my whole journey of healing has been a long arc of just getting to know myself and my own desires and really learning to listen to what's emanating from within and trying to silence the noise outside of me.
That's so beautiful. I am so curious. Like I kind of just want to like dive in. So what is polyamory? Like what does polyamory really mean to you? I know we got a little bit of information from you just then, but what is it to you?
Yeah, so I think it's important to break down the etymology of the word. So poly means multiple, and amory means love. So it's really the practice of holding multiple loves. And for me, it's a practice of really learning what I want and need and being able to communicate that and hold steady as I communicate that and be able to listen to what my other partners want and need, even when it's very different from what I want. And it's been this long process of learning to move away from equating love with exclusivity and control and domination, right? He's mine, he's my partner, and just remembering that we're all sovereign individuals and that we get to choose and consent to how we want to be in relationship with other people. And so it's been a real journey. I've been on this path for, I just recounted, I think it's been a little more than 12 years.
And we hear so many different terms. So obviously there's polyamory, which you just described, but also we hear like non-monogamy, ethical non-monogamy. Can you just give us a little bit of a breakdown what is what? Because I think people tend to, especially because I was on like the dating websites or the websites, like how old am I? Like the apps for so long. And there's just all of these. So what's the difference? And help us understand that first and foremost.
Totally. Great question. There's so many words and new language, and it can be a little disorienting. So I'm glad you asked. So, non-monogamy is kind of the umbrella term for lots of different ways of relating that are non-monogamous. So, anything other than monogamy. So, I would say polyamory is kind of at one end of the spectrum where it's all about creating multiple loving relationships. And then, yeah, I mean, underneath that umbrella, there's swinging, which is really more about sexual exploration and less about the emotional connection. There's open relationships and monogamish kind of frameworks where maybe you have a primary partner and you have some fun on the side. It's usually more casual. There's non-monogamous relationships, which can mean anything from like a hierarchical approach, where again, you maybe have that primary partner and then you have other secondary or tertiary partners. Some people practice non-monogamy in a non-hierarchical way, meaning that there's no set hierarchy on who gets prioritized. There's relationship anarchy, which is even more kind of,
Which just makes
open.
me itchy. I'm like, wait, what? There's like no
Yeah, that one
structure,
is kind
right?
of like we're just deciding together how we want to relate. We're throwing out all these relationship scripts around heteronormativity and mononormativity. And that's probably worth defining that term. It means the expectation that monogamy is the only right or valid way of being in relationship. So, yeah, relationship anarchists really decide together, how do we want to relate? What does our relationship look like? What elements do we want to include? There's solo polyamory, which is where you kind of think of yourself as your first primary partner and then have other connections. Usually people don't have nesting partners in that structure. And that's probably another foreign term, maybe for some listeners. Nesting partners is another way of talking about someone that you live with, you cohabitate, and you have some elements of yeah, commitment without using the primary secondary hierarchical language. So I'll just say that's my current structure. I have a kitchen table polyamorous nesting partner, and kitchen table means that all of our partners and metamors could theoretically sit around a kitchen table and have a meal together, and that would be comfortable. And I'll just say another term worth defining, metamor means the partner of my partner. So I'm married, my nesting partner is my husband, and he has another partner. And we've tried to move away from hierarchy, but there is some inherent hierarchy in the fact that we live together and share a home and finances. And so that was a whole mouthful. I'll pause there.
No, I appreciate the definitions because so I have mentioned to you, I've been exploring my potential around being polyamorous or monogamish, or it's something that I've been exploring for years. And when I first started on this path, it's kind of like the dark web. Like it's like, oh, there's this whole like culture, right? Like this culture. And not to say that it's dark, but it's like this has all been happening and I have been so unaware that this is a way that people are relating to each other and connecting with one another. And there's just so much because another term that's coming up for me that I had just come across and I was like, oh my gosh, is what is the term? Now I need you, Aria, the term where it's like you
Compersion?
derive, what is it? Yes, yeah,
I'm
compersion.
reading
So
your mind here.
define compersion for us. Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I wish I had Marie Tuyan's definition in front of me. She wrote a book called Compersion. So I would say she's definitely the
Yes.
compersion expert. One of my metamors and I have actually been doing a book club where we read her book chapter by chapter. So compersion is generally the idea of taking pleasure and joy in your partner's life exploration, even when it doesn't involve you. So it kind of flips the script on your partner's out with someone else. Your default reaction should be jealous. Actually, it's an invitation to think about other ways we might respond in that situation when we move away from thinking about owning that partner's time and energy and really centering the idea that we want them to be happy and fulfilled, even if we have nothing to do with it. So Marie Tuan creates this great kind of spectrum of compersion, where on one side there's the compersion, or there's embodied compersion, which is like the bubbly feelings of like, oh, my partner's on a date with someone else and I feel really excited and happy. And I'll just say that's a place that a lot of my clients want to get to or aspire to get to, but aren't there yet. One step below that is the idea of attitudinal compersion, which is like we can anchor into this idea that yes, we want our partners to be happy, we want them to be fulfilled, and we can hold that kind of ethic even if we're struggling with some feelings of jealousy. And then we have jealousy on the other end. So it's really a spectrum, and people kind of move between different feelings. I always want to normalize that if we feel jealous, that doesn't mean we're bad at polyamory. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. It's a natural emotion that we all move through. And my work is really about helping people learn how to work with jealousy and not see it as this big scary thing, and really listen to the messages underneath.
I also understand. I feel like when we've talked in the past and we talk about compersion and jealousy and all that, it really at the end of the day comes down to what is happening in my nervous system. Like, right? So I'm experiencing some sense of like not feeling safe or whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about the role that our nervous system plays in? I mean, we're just going, this feels so academic. It's so funny. Like we're getting like, let's define everything and then let's talk about it. So can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about the way that the nervous system plays into all of this?
Absolutely. I think understanding your nervous system is a huge part of being able to do non-monogamy well. And in my group coaching program and with my one-on-one clients, we often will spend time mapping an individual's nervous system because we all have kind of three states. And we really want to understand like what are the triggers that send us into hyperarousal, which for a lot of people shows up as energy building in the body, maybe a face getting flushed, heart beating faster, a sense of yeah, anger, anxiety, right? It's that heightened emotion feeling. So that's hyperarousal. And then often we'll, if so that's kind of the first survival state. And if we're having trouble moving through that, then sometimes we'll drop into hypoarousal, which is where kind of everything shuts down. Maybe we get a little foggy, have hard time communicating. It's kind of that disassociated shutdown state. And so I really work with my clients to help them understand what's happening in the body, like noticing, tracking, like, ooh, my face is starting to get hot. I'm starting to move outside of my window of tolerance, which is the place where we want to hang out in our nervous system. Um, and when we can bring more somatic awareness to what's happening in the body, how we're moving through these three nervous system states, we can take better care of ourselves and realize I'm actually not resourced enough to have this hard conversation about that hot date you had last night. Let me go take a pause and take care of myself and come back when I feel more regulated and centered. So, what I've found is that a lot of people really try to push through the hard conversations, even when they're totally dysregulated. And that often ends up creating harm. We say things that we don't mean, and it just creates a bigger mess. So, a lot of the work with all of this is learning to recognize that jealousy is a messenger. It often shows us what our needs are. And if we can slow down enough to really listen to that and tune into it instead of suppressing it, playing it cool, pretending like it doesn't exist, then we hopefully over time, by learning to practice working with the feelings as they arise, we can work to understand that jealousy is not this big thing. It doesn't have to be an identity. It can just be another emotion that sometimes shows up. We can work with it and it can pass.
It's so interesting because you do hear people say, "Well, I'm a jealous person. I'm too much of a jealous person to explore polyamory, even if they have a desire to explore it," right? And it's interesting because you said that jealousy is a messenger, just like, and I say this about a lot of emotions, like many emotions are messengers, but there's a bit of shame, I think, associated with jealousy, even in monogamous relationships. It's like, well, I can't be like the cool, play it cool, easygoing, you know? And so in your experience, what messages does jealousy usually convey? Like what needs are not being met?
Yeah, usually I think about jealousy as a signal from the body that we need reassurance, connection, safety, and attunement. So I think it's really important to normalize jealousy as something I still experience. 13 years later, like, not immune from it. It would be weird to think that, like, someday we're gonna get to a place where we don't feel sadness or we don't feel anger or we don't feel joy, right? So I like to just remind people that it's something that can happen to all of us. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean we're failing. It doesn't mean we're not good enough for polyamory. It doesn't mean we're doing it badly. But it's really an invitation to slow down and check in with ourselves and be like, ooh, can I soothe this myself? Can I do some breath work? Can I go to a yoga class? Can I phone my friend? Um, or do I need to reach out to a partner and ask for a change of behavior, clearer agreements, more reassurance that even if they are seeing other people, that I still matter? So, yeah, it can be tender, and I think there is a lot of, um, I often see people wanting to suppress it and pretend like it doesn't exist, and from my experience, that just makes it worse and prolongs the challenging feelings, and also then sends us into, the thought spirals where we're feeling bad, and then we create all these stories, which may or may not be true.
And even, yeah, even just naming jealousy, I feel like takes so much of the steam out of it as well. I Yeah, it's interesting, like, whether it's been exploring my sense of poly or, like, being with someone that, like, I just crave so much of their energy and their time. I think that I tend to shy away from just saying, like, "I'm feeling jealous right now," or instead say, like, "Well, I'm feeling sad," or "I'm feeling this," or "I'm feeling that." So it's an interesting emotion because I do feel like there's a lot of shame wrapped up in that emotion itself. So, um yeah,
Yeah.
it's coming to the forefront as I'm, like, sitting here. So, my question to you is, you said you've been poly or exploring poly for 13 years. So what has your journey been like to arrive at being polyamorous? Like, tell us a little bit more about what brought you here.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I never would have predicted that I would be here in this moment. It started in New York City. I told my then male partner at the time that I had a curiosity of dating women. And I still remember the moment when he told his like four best friends this secret of mine and just feeling such a wave of shame that, like, oh, that was my deepest secret. You weren't supposed to tell him, like, so much internalized homophobia in my body. But he was also thrilled because he was like, "Does that mean we can have a threesome?" Like, sure.
Like, so
Um,
conflicted,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm mad at you, but also, yes, I could use some support, and I don't know how to date women, so let's do that together. So it became this shared mission. We had, yeah, some early threesomes that didn't end well. There was a lot of alcohol involved, which definitely impairs consent and creates more shame. We moved into, I guess, a phase where we practiced, well, I wouldn't say we practiced, but we went to some play parties, some sex parties, and had more swinger experiences where it was like meeting other couples, having sexual novel explorations together. I think it wasn't until we moved to San Francisco that we started understanding more of this terminology and language, realizing that there were ways to build relationships beyond just having sex for fun with other humans, and started dating a couple together. We were in a quad structure for a little bit, which means four people trying to relate together. Complicated. Eventually, my male partner dropped out of that, and I stayed, so we became a triad dynamic. Um, and then there came a point when we realized that my now nesting partner and I really wanted different things. He realized he was kinky. I was more interested in exploring my queerness. And it's interesting to see the way kind of kink communities, queer communities, and polyamorous communities overlap and intersect, but really are their own separate kind of spaces. Um, and yeah, I've had girlfriends in the past. I've had other male partners in the past, and we've gotten to a place. I mean, there was a while where we were practicing a very hierarchical approach. It was like, you're my husband, you're my first person, you're my priority always, and we're still very committed life partners, but there is more spaciousness now in our relationship ecosystem for other people to play more prominent roles. My nesting partner starting a new business with his other partner, which is like a new level of poly growth and expansion. There've never been contracts with other humans. So that's new. And we've gotten to a place, yeah, where kind of all of our partners and metamors sometimes spend time together at parties or dinners, and it's become kind of this like extended family structure. We spent this last Christmas with my metamor's mom, which was really sweet. It was kind of like a healing experience to have a parent be very accepting and welcoming, and that hasn't been my experience with my direct family members. So it's been a long journey with lots of iterations, and never ever would have guessed that my life would look like what it does now.
It also sounds like a lot of logistics. like
So many
like
logistics and
so much
schedules.
scheduling and planning.
Yeah.
So like it's almost like the mundane side of poly from what I've seen and experienced myself is like, oh, there's a lot of navigating the logistical side of it and then also bring in the emotional side and like consent and like so much of poly is about consent also and
Yeah.
it's a lot like it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot of emotional labor. It's a lot of time thinking about things. It's a lot of juggling and balancing and being like, okay, there's a lot of needs in this ecosystem. How do we talk about them? How do we figure out how to get them met as best as possible? Knowing that sometimes it's a negotiation and we don't always get exactly what we want, but
Mhm.
it's been a real learning journey. A lot of new skills had to be developed to do this well.
And I think of friendship for people who are not poly or have not like started moving in that exploration yet, even if they feel like they might be, but to try to understand it from a sense of like, okay, we have multiple friends that we have to balance needs and, but with sexual partners or nesting partners or whatever, it is just a deeper level of that, of like, okay, my spending time with this partner may affect the other person that you don't really have to think about when you're just balancing different connections and logistics around connections.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting how we kind of put relationships on this pedestal and they mean so much more and they're seen as like the pinnacle and yeah, it's really an invitation to kind of rewrite the scripts that we're running about how we want to relate and interact with each other. And I've heard this example before, and I think it's an interesting thing to think about is like when a family has one child, they move from a two-person dyad to a three-person family, and suddenly the love
Yeah.
expands. And then they have another child, and suddenly there's more love, right? It doesn't take away from the first child. So that's an example, a cultural example of where we see love as like an infinite expanding resource. But for some reason, when we think about relationships or romantic partnerships, we see it as a limited resource. Well, it's where it's like it has to be just two people. It's like, well,
Mhm.
does it have to be two people? Permission to decide.
Yeah. Like the love itself can expand. And also, there are when I think of time as a resource also, it's like time and attention and like energetic and emotional capacity, like those are things that have some limitations too, so it just seems as though it would be quite a bit to hold the tension between like my love is infinite
Yes,
and
but my time
yet
and
like
energy is definitely not.
definitely not, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do see people getting into trouble there when they're like new to non-monogamy. It's kind of like this kid in a candy shop mentality where it's like, I'm gonna go on 10 new dates this week. And it's like,
And make yourself sick.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, what about time for yourself or, being at home and being quiet and
You also have a
meditating? And
job or
yeah, totally.
like you
Yeah.
have to create income.
So it's helpful to really, yeah, check in with yourself and be like, okay, what does my week look like? What does my month look like? Where are the places that I have needs that maybe aren't totally getting met? Maybe I want a new activity partner. Maybe, it's helpful to
Mhm.
really be intentional instead of just starting relationships with a bunch of people that then we don't have bandwidth for and then we end up disappointing them
Yeah. Or ourselves, right?
or ourselves. Yeah, totally. First and foremost. Yeah.
So, a lot of the listeners are so used to hearing kind of the spiritual lens on a lot of these conversations. So, can you tell us a little bit about your beliefs around like how poly and spirituality intersects for you? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big question. I think it's interesting. So for me, I really started giving myself permission to explore my queerness, to explore my
Mhm.
desires as part of my healing journey. And I feel like ayahuasca was very instrumental in kind of removing some of the limitations I had around how life is supposed to look, and really helped me tap into other ways of thinking, kind of remove some of the shame from my body. And yeah, I think, I was raised in a Quaker household. So we were part of the Friends community, which believe in pacifism and nonviolence. And that really, that philosophy really teaches you that everyone has like an inner light to tend. And I, my background is in mindfulness and meditation. I used to be a breathwork facilitator at retreats and had a standing class in San Francisco, that this gorgeous studio that closed right before as the pandemic hit. But one thing that I always challenge my clients to think about is, yeah, before we layer on all of these external relationships, how can we really prioritize a relationship with ourselves first and foremost, so that we are tending to that inner light and making sure that we're approaching relationships from a healthy place. I think so much of monogamous culture teaches us to find the one who's going to complete us. And I think that's such dangerous thinking. I really help people work to remember that we're sovereign individuals. It's not about completing each other, but about finding people who can help us grow and evolve and become better versions of ourselves. And so I challenge all of my clients to start a meditation practice, just to carve out time and space to be with themselves, to be with their bodies, to notice what's going on inside of them. I think so much of modern culture really teaches us to treat ourselves like we're machines, and we end up operating from a place of burnout and being over capacity. I think the more we can slow down and really check in with ourselves and be like, what do I need in this moment? And make choices from that centered, grounded place, like being in touch with our values and our truth. I think it's much easier to be intentional about how we're creating relationships.
Hmm. That's so good. I'm just like, I'm sitting here thinking there's something really powerful about this mindset that relationships, and especially romantic relationships, because I think we, again, like they're so prioritized in our culture and like really focused on, and it's so pressury to find the one and all of that. And I think it's such a shift in thinking to say, actually, I'm whole and sovereign in and of myself, and the healing and intention that's required in order to even be able to feel that way. I mean, that's not like we say it so off the cuff, but like that is a lifelong journey. Like I'm literally just now, I'm turning 42 in 3 days.
Well, happy
And
early birthday.
thank you. And I am just now in a place where that's starting to feel true in my body,
Yeah.
that I am whole after like a lifetime of trauma. And to consider that relationships from a romantic perspective, whether it's one or multiple, and again, something that you and I talked about in the past is like it's not that you're saying polyamorous is the only way to be. It's just it's we get to choose. We get to
Absolutely.
choose who we're going to be at any given point,
Yeah.
and whether, and it's just taking off the table this idea that monogamy is the way, and saying there are multiple paths and multiple ways and we get to choose. But to think that a single partner or multiple partners would then enhance our wholeness and our oneness with ourself and with the universe and with the energies around us. And it's just such a different shift to say, okay, this person can amplify my experience. This person can enhance my experience. This person can help me get my needs met in ways that I could probably still do on my own, but I don't want to,
Yeah.
right? Like it's such a different mindset, and it's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like great nuance. I'm definitely not advocating for everyone to be polyamorous. There's a lot of people, I think their nervous systems and attachment styles actually can't handle it.
Mhm.
And 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 there are, yeah, I mean, my work is really about reminding people that they have choices. I think, just to share another personal story, I was monogamous in my 20s and frankly did a really terrible job at that and hurt a lot of people in the process. I come from a family of divorce, where my mom fell in love with a woman and my dad cheated on her with his secretary. And there's sometimes when I like rewrite it in my brain, I'm like, if they had known that they had other options, is there a world where my family could still be together? Where my mom has a female partner and maybe my dad's getting his sexual needs met with someone else and it's done in a consensual way, not in this like secrecy deception frame. So I think it's important to remember that monogamy doesn't work for a lot of people. A lot of monogamous connections end in divorce and heartbreak, and a lot of it has to do with infidelity. And I think it's important just to normalize that we do have choices. We can choose to communicate our needs and share them with people instead of hiding them and being secretive and telling lies, which is not how I was raised. It was definitely something I had to learn over time. And yeah, I think the main message that I want people to take away is just you have choices in how you want to relate, and they are what did you call it? The dark web. Yeah, it is like kind of
Yeah.
a taboo
It's like a
area for some
subculture. Yeah.
people. Yeah, a subculture, but it polyamory works. It's possible to be in multiple secure, loving, committed relationships, and I think a lot of people don't have any examples of what that looks like, and most romantic stories celebrate monogamy, and I
Mhm.
just, yeah, I really want people to know that there's different ways of being in loving relationship that don't cause harm and but do require, yeah, consent and communication and practice owning our needs and yeah, like yeah, knowing that those are our needs that we have to figure out how to fulfill for ourselves. And maybe it's needs that can be met in community or as friends, or maybe it's multiple loving sexual, emotional, romantic partners.
Hmm. And I'm always just struck with the requirement for transparency. Like there's just no way to whether you're monogamous or not, whether you're monogamous, polyamorous, I feel like regardless of the structure with which you decide to pursue romantic relationships, transparency, being in our integrity, like allowing ourselves to be honest with ourselves and with the people with whom we love, regardless of how you choose to partner, that is almost like paramount, right, for the success of any relationship. I mean, I feel like just I guess from my experience as someone who does prioritize connection, I think at times we feel afraid. Like if we use your mom and dad for as an example, it's like, what were they afraid of in just expressing their sexual, emotional, relational needs? It's like we get so afraid that if we actually express a desire to be with someone else or whatever, that connection will leave us, that we will
Oh,
experience abandonment, like
yeah, we'll be
there, which
shamed. Yeah.
or feel shame. When in the end, it's like being out of our integrity is almost a surefire way for that to happen, right? Like so I don't know where I'm going. Like if I'm not sure there's a question in there, but what comes up for you?
Yeah, well, I want to touch on the transparency piece that you're talking about because I think it's important to remember there's a difference between privacy and secrecy. And I really encourage all of my clients to create disclosure agreements. So for some people, it's really triggering and hard to hear that their partner is developing emotional connections with other people. For other people, it's much harder to hear about their sexual connections with other people. So I think it's really important that we get clear on like, what is the information that's hard for me to hear? What is the information that's hard for me to share? And can we create some agreements around how we're disclosing information to each other and really checking in with our nervous systems? Like, what can I handle hearing? Do I need to hear all of the details of your date with someone last night? Maybe not. Maybe I just need to know you had a good time and never they were respectful, it was consensual. Great. For some people, they have a don't ask, don't tell arrangement, which a lot of literature kind of frowns upon because it kind of almost reinforces this like shame and secrecy and almost acts as if these other connections aren't happening or we're pretending like they're not happening. But what I've come to understand is that for some people, that arrangement is really a way of taking care of their nervous systems because they can't yet handle any information, and ideally they're working to grow their capacity to be with new information and stretch and grow in new ways. Um, but I think it's important to be like, okay, I absolutely want to know if you have sex with someone else so that I can we can make, safer sex agreements. Or I want to know if you're falling in love with someone so that I can be prepared for that. Or I want to know if you're deepening with someone. And I always encourage people that it's okay if your disclosure agreements aren't exactly equal. If one person struggles with some type of information, you can titrate that. If someone struggles with another type of information, maybe you can just have more awareness around how information is communicated back and forth. And it's super nuanced and requires a lot of communication and emotional intelligence and a knowledge of what you need and where your boundaries are. And it's all a practice.
It's interesting. And I know that different people have different thresholds for what it means for them to be authentic. And for me, if I were in, and I have again, I have been exploring like polyamory. I think for me, not that I need to divulge every single detail of every, whatever with like if I have a primary partner or just somebody that I spend the most time with, whatever. But there is this level of like the don't ask, don't tell that for me is like you're asking me to like not express myself,
Yeah,
which could feel really difficult, right? And again, I think that this is just at the end of the day is like, again, it comes down to compatibility. Like, who am I most compatible with if I'm going to explore my potentially polyamorous side? Am I with someone who can allow me to still be me and be expressive? And if we bump up against something that doesn't, necessarily, like, I think people just don't understand that even in polyamory, you have to still find compatibility. Like, what am I comfortable with? What do I consent to?
yeah.
At what level do I share? What does safety look like? And that's like emotional, sexual safety. I mean, there's just so much, right?
Totally. How are we thinking about power dynamics? Are we on the same page about hierarchy or non-hierarchy? Do we want to live
Right.
together? Do we want to build a family together? Like there's so many
There's so
questions
much.
and there are so many different ways of structuring things. So yeah, compatibility is a really important question. Like are we values aligned on how we're approaching this? Are we moving towards the same
Yeah.
thing? And I think yeah, I always like to encourage people to think about it as like little experiments. Like, okay, we're gonna experiment with you're gonna go on dates once a week and I'm gonna be with my friends that night. And then if we do that for a few months and everyone's feeling good, maybe we expand it. Maybe we have an overnight with someone, right? It's like uh, boundaries and agreements can be fluid and flexible, and there should be a conversation about them as we're growing and evolving and
Mhm.
learning new things. And yeah, I see it as kind of this like gradual stretching and expansion phase. And sometimes people hit a wall where they're like, I can't stretch anymore and I just need to hang out here for a long time. And we have to evaluate like, all right, am I willing to hang out here and suppress my needs that I just realized I had? Are there ways that we can keep moving together towards the things that we both want? And yeah, there's no right or wrong answer, but it is a deeply personal journey.
And it's just another layer of like values that we need to unpack together, right? I mean,
Mhm.
most people, at least to the point where I'm again almost 42, it's like most people at 42 have been in some relationship, and you do have to a little bit like reckon with values. Like, do our values align? And it's just like another layer. It's like, okay, well, how we partner with how many partners, like what does that actually look like? It's not enough to say, oh, you and I are both poly, cool, like we are in alignment in that way. It's very layered and nuanced. And
Totally. How do you
yeah,
practice? What meanings are you making from different behaviors? What are your core needs in terms of feeling connected? Are you expecting we're going to spend 90% of our time together? Are you cool with me
right.
being gone for 50% of the time? Right? It's like so a lot of conversations, and some of it we don't know until we get to a place where it's suddenly like, oh, maybe we're not aligned. Maybe we do want different things. And then that's always an interesting moment where it's like in monogamy, it's like, all right, if we decide we're not compatible, then we break up and that's it, or we stay together, right? It's kind of two options.
Yeah, it's
But
very black and white.
what I love about non-monogamy is like there can be a de-escalation of the connection without abandoning it entirely. It's kind of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't live together, but I still love you and I still want to see you and be in your life. So maybe we move to secondary partners. Maybe you go look for somebody who's a primary partner that can meet more of your needs, and I go do my thing, and we can still be in each other's lives without it feeling like, yeah, so binary.
Yeah. Which I think also when I think about how it intersects with spirituality is like a lot of what I'm coming to find about the universe and just energy in and of itself is there is more of that nuance, like that ability to say, okay, I love you, and it just looks a little different. Where the world that we've been conditioned into, just what's been normalized is that love looks like this.
Yeah.
It's black and white. It's this
Hmm.
or it's that. And there's almost a sense of like, I am no longer quote unquote good as a human or whatever if I stray outside of that. Even if I have like a crush, I'm not allowed to have a crush outside of my primary monogamous relationship. Like, oh gosh, like, do I disclose that to my partner? Oh, that would just be a shitstorm. Right. So it's like, what I love about this conversation too is like spiritually, we are kind of being asked as a collective to begin to think outside of these bounds. It's like that could still be true for me. I could still maybe want a monogamous, partnership for the rest of my life. And did I really reckon with what my other options are? Did I
Yeah.
really sit and think about, okay, I do know that there are other ways to connect. I understand I have shame wrapped up here. I have shame wrapped up here. And am I making a choice with like all of my faculties, with all
Yeah.
of my options? And I think that that is what I'm hearing you say is like, you can choose monogamy, of course, as long as it's a choice,
Yeah.
right? As long as you have all the options. Because when you and I have talked in the past, you're like talking a lot about consent. Can you actually consent to a choice if
You don't know you have
if you don't
alternatives?
know the choice and what are the
Not
options?
really. Yeah.
That's not consent.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think a lot of people, yeah, default to monogamy and don't realize there are other options. And I always applaud people who go on this journey of being like, oh, there's all these other options. But actually, for me, what feels best is monogamy. I think that's great. It's like we're choosing it. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But for so many people, it's not a choice. We don't know that there are other options other than infidelity, right? And it's crazy to me that infidelity is like so normalized in
It's like a
culture
better quote
as,
unquote option than
yeah, then
Polly.
consent and care and taking, being
Yes.
intentional and
And
um
disclosure
yeah,
and
talking about
like
our feelings and being willing to be seen and
that's so fucked up if we really think about it. Like it's more normalized to be in a monogamous relationship and lie to our partners about like feeling emotionally or like sexually or whatever about
totally
somebody
break
else.
our agreements,
Break all of
break
our
hearts. Yeah.
commitments, break your heart. Like it's more normalized to be that way than it is to just have the hard fucking conversation and say, I think I might need some other of my needs to be met outside of our connection.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to our sense of like worthiness and goodness. And
Mhm.
so many of us are so afraid, I mean, myself included, are like terrified of abandonment. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I
tricky.
mean, I think it's also important to remember that like the institution of marriage was originally not something that was designed as like a love
It's
union,
not
right?
romantic
It's
at
like
all.
based in capitalism and the church,
And
and it's about
ownership of
joining
women.
resources and totally gender roles
Mhm.
and so yeah, I always like to question these scripts and expectations like where did this come from and is it serving us? And permission to choose things that are more aligned with our hearts, desires, that set our soul on fire, that make us feel whole and juicy and vibrant. Yeah.
Well, I think which leads into this question that I've been really feeling for this podcast, and it's something that I really want to explore more deeply going forward is Aria, with all of the wisdom and the embodiment of what you have brought to the podcast, like what does it mean to be human to you? What is humanness?
Mm,
Like how does that land?
yeah, I love that question. I think it's to be human is to exist in the tension between longing and letting go. Like
Hmm.
seeking meaning and connection and understanding while also wrestling with uncertainty and imperfection and impermanence.
Mm.
I think it's about really giving ourselves permission to feel deeply all of the emotions, sometimes all at once, holding space for contradictions. I love my partner, and in this moment, I'm feeling jealous. I want us both to be free and sovereign, and I need reassurance. Um, I think to be human is to be on this journey of endless creation, destruction, and regrowth, learning and unlearning and relearning. And what I've found recently is that my most joyous moments of being human are when I'm surrounded by a web of loving humans and feel like I'm operating in a place of mutualism instead of this hyper independence and hyper individuality that most modern American culture teaches us. And yeah, it's a reminder that humans forever have connected in non-monogamous ways. If you can look at the history of humanity, there are examples of all different ways of relating. I think it's a good remembrance that our ancestors knew that more love and abundance was possible. And it's like a reclaiming of connection outside of capitalism, outside of colonialism, outside of heteropatriarchy. Um, yeah, that's how I'd begin to answer that question.
Oh, I love that so much. And you have to tell it, what is your, do you know your astrology? Because I'm like, ooh, now do you know your big three?
Taurus sun, Taurus moon, Libra rising.
Ah, okay. Because
Venus, everything.
yes, yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. And especially like the Libra rising, which is like holding the tension of like a lot of different things and being able to like move through that. I love what you
Yeah.
said. Like to be human is to acknowledge the tension between longing and letting go. I just got like full goosebumps as you said that because I like if we're able to master that, if we're able to say like I long for this person, place, thing, experience, and I'm also able to let it go, it's this almost like an exercise in non-attachment,
Absolutely.
which is such a profound way to navigate this life. It makes me think though, like where my mind goes is I I believe that we have like soul desires. Like there is an experience that I feel in my heart, that I feel that this is the path that I'm walking, that this experience will be mine. For instance, like I don't know necessarily, am I more monogamous? Am I more polyamorous? Am I monogamish? Like, does it depend on the person that I'm with? Like, there's so many like considerations. And what I do know for a fact is that I have a soul-led partner, like that I want to kind of like run out the clock with, right? Like there is one
Mhm.
one person, whether it's just us, whether there's like multiple people, whatever, but there is like this one person. And then I'm like, when I think about that is it just feels like a fact. It's like just true to me because I'm like, okay, that is a desire in my heart. And the way that I believe spiritually is like that means on some in some dimensional reality, whether in some timeline that's already existing somewhere. Like I'm just kind of
Mhm.
like biding my time until it's time for that, right?
Totally. Current soul
And
fam. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like when I think about, okay, the tension between longing and letting go, is it like letting go of the specific person? Is it letting go of what that actually looks like, whether that's monogamous or polyamorous or whatever? Because the longing, I'm like, I got that. Like longing,
Totally.
easy.
Totally. Can very easily tap into the desires and the longings, but yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like the letting go is like letting go of outdated cultural scripts that were handed down to us that we
Yes.
don't vibrate with. It's letting go of old trauma wounds from our
Mm.
families of origin where our needs weren't met. It's letting go of patterns of reactivity and learning how to be more intentional in how we respond that aligns with our values. It's around like letting go of defensiveness and fear stories and scarcity. Yeah, I feel like there's so much to let go of in our mainstream culture. And I feel like in this moment in particular, it feels more important than ever that we really evaluate like what are we doing here as humans together, and is it working for us, and how can we expand the communities of care so that we can bring more people in to get their needs met, to take care of our neighbors and our friends and our families, and really like look beyond binaries and figure out
Mhm.
ways to reach across the aisle, because what is happening in mainstream culture is not working and really scary.
It's not sustainable. I was just having a conversation with a friend recently about this, and it's like, the top 1%, or there's like 1% of wealthy people controlling like all of the wealth essentially.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's not sustainable. Like something has to crumble, something has to fall because the ways, I mean, we just have to. But I really loved what you said about like, because in my mind, I was like, hearing you say letting go, it's like, oh gosh, I have to like sacrifice a part of this beautiful vision that I have. Like I have to
Mm.
be willing to let go of like the really nourishing and expansive part of my vision. And what I hear you say is like, no, it's about shedding and letting go of like the structures or like the trauma responses or the things that don't feel good in our bodies
Yeah.
and haven't for a long time, but we've been so conditioned to.
Operate from those fear
Yes.
places, and yeah, younger parts of us that are like, well, this has worked in the past to get my needs met, so let me keep
Yeah.
doing this pattern because it's kept me safe enough, even if it's like
Yeah.
that's not actually how we want to move through the world and be in relationship. And yeah, I feel like
And
it's letting go of all the things that are not serving us and our communities.
yes. And it all is also interesting because, these default behaviors or whatever have kept us quote unquote safe. And also, well, a lot of us have reached a point where it's like, okay, that's no longer keeping me safe. It's just keeping me alone
Totally.
or experiencing some version of my operating in my life that is not actually what I desire.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I love that being human is like the tension between longing and letting go. And I feel like that is such it's such a different way of operating when I think that we live in a culture where we're conditioned to have like more, more, more. And it's
totally.
like, well, let me just not worry about that default of mine or that place that I'm unhealed. And I'm just going to keep accumulating like experiences, people, whatever. But like, that's harmful, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just add one of the modalities I work with is internal family system or parts work, which recognizes that we all have this higher self. And we also have all of these parts of ourselves that came online when we were younger as a way to keep us safe in different situations. And it's important to know that, yeah, those kind of automatic, embodied, triggered responses, even if they don't serve us now as adults, they had their time and place. And so it's like, how can we think those old ways of relating and update
Mhm.
them and give them new strategies so that we can embody the things that we actually long for and desire and are aligned with, yeah, how we want to be now as adults.
Again, it's coming back down to choice. Like, what do I choose for myself? What's the experience that I choose?
Totally.
And yeah, I mean, for myself, I was operating from this place of really not even realizing the ways that my childhood trauma impacted the way I wasn't like really letting my heart be completely open to somebody. This
Yeah.
is like a very recent development
Mm,
of, yeah, where I was really reckoning I had some inner child stuff coming up and like, oh, well, we can't trust people with our heart because we did that very early on in life and then we were wounded from that.
totally. So let me
And
keep shutting down or putting up
yeah,
walls or not letting people in. And
yeah, my big
Mhm.
one was abandoned before being abandoned.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily abandon the relationship physically or even sexually or emotionally or whatever, but maybe emotionally, but it would just be like uh keeping myself a little safe and always having like I didn't always have one foot out the door necessarily, but I always knew where the escape hatch was
Sure. Like
in a
hyper
relationship.
vigilant, like ready to run. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, having my like plan in place, like even just kind of in the background program, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until again, like right now I'm seeing a woman, the first woman that I've been like actually in a full-on relationship with, and to be able to like open up parts of my heart that didn't exist before, which I think honestly could only have been opened by a woman,
Mm.
truly. Yeah, like the safety of, because I've dated historically, I've dated men. Primarily, I mean, like not, it's not my first experience with a woman, but it's the first time I've like really been in a relationship with a woman. And to have parts of my heart online that had not been accessed before, and
Yeah.
to be like, holy shit, the vulnerability of that, of to say, okay, like you could really destroy me because you have so,
Mm.
which is again, also that in and of itself is kind of a trauma response, right? Of like, oh my God, you could
Totally.
do so much harm to
Hmm.
me. And yeah, I'm not really even sure where I'm going with this, to be honest,
Yeah.
but I do believe that it is. I mean, I feel like this is our next evolution as humans, is to really understand, okay, what are the ways that my woundedness, whether in this life, past lives, even like ancestral woundedness, like how are those things showing up for me? How are they getting in the way of my true desires? Because we
Yeah.
can say what we desire, but like we have these true desires. Because like on the surface, I was desiring to be super self-sufficient, desiring to kind of be alone because I always had that escape hatch like ready to
Mhm.
go. And what my true desire is, what I mentioned to you, is like I want somebody to like deeply, with whom to deeply partner for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And that's not possible if I don't begin to heal these wounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the best thing we can all do is work on healing ourselves so that we can show up in alignment and not be operating from these wounds and scarcity and fears and traumas. And yeah, I feel like that is what the world is asking of us all, is like, how do we clear that, heal it,
Mhm.
get really committed to that journey so that we can be in right relationship with each other, with the natural world, with Mother Earth. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that you are on this journey with this woman.
Yeah.
I agree. Dating a woman is the best. Highly
It is the
recommended.
best. It is the best. I love it. I love being I mean, yeah. And we talked about this too, because I think that you and I kind of began to embrace our queerness like later in life
Definitely.
also. And there's something really special about, I don't know, just like feeling into that part of me that has not been expressed like
Yeah.
fully in
Yeah.
so long. So
Yeah. Definitely.
big ups to women.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely a late bloomer over here too. Yeah, it took a long
Yeah,
time for me to work
we love,
through all of that
yes.
internalized homophobia. And yeah, over the years my mom and I have had some conversations about like why it was so hard for her to come out. And she shared this really heartbreaking story of having like the only example in her childhood growing up of someone who was not heterosexual was this cousin Ruthie who moved to San Francisco and was disowned from the family. And
Ah.
so the story was, we don't talk about Ruthie. And so she was like, well, I don't want to be disowned by my family, so I'm going to hide that part of myself. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I feel like there's so many cultural stories that teach us to hide, to not show up in our most authentic, express self. And I think that is still a journey that I've been on. Is like, okay, how do I move away from that story and really embody my truth and show people that there is another way? And yeah, it's definitely at the beginning, talking publicly about this felt so edgy for me. I still think about that moment of telling my boyfriend 13 years ago that I wanted to be intimate with women. And if that version of me could see me now, like, she'd be so proud.
Like talking so publicly,
Yeah.
and it's so healing. This is another thing that I've been feeling into, is like seeing women being openly queer and loving, and of course men, all, I mean like all genders, right? Like of course. But there's something really healing for me, especially because so much of my woundedness around love and relationships have centered men.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, there's a level of like safety and comfort and like being myself and not necessarily needing to like, I don't know, like worry about the male gaze. Like I think that's been my
Yeah.
favorite.
I love that. Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, well,
I
thank
lo
you. Thank you so
yeah.
much for all of that. I'm curious, something that I ask everybody is what is your bumper sticker? Like if there's one little piece of wisdom that you could put all over the world, what would it be?
Mm, peace is possible.
Peace is possible. Tell
Yeah.
us more.
Yeah, I think I often think about this idea of like polyamory as a route to world peace, which feels maybe not totally like a direct route, but for me, my background in pacifism and learning more about myself on this journey and learning more about how to heal old wounds and show up with peace in my heart even when I feel triggered, I think is such a valuable practice that I think mainstream culture would absolutely benefit from being able to regulate our nervous system and make choices about how and when we're communicating and like committing to relate with kindness and respect for all beings even when they're different for us. um yeah, I think it's really shown me that it's possible to find peace and compassion and love and connection in all kinds of places that society would teach me is impossible. Like I have a very sweet connection with my metamor who's dating my husband, and like society teaches us we should compete and be enemies and struggle over resources, but when we can shift that and be like there's enough here for all of us, we can coexist. I think it's such a paradigm shift, and my hope is that, yeah, I can help people see that there's other ways of being in relationship with all kinds of humans.
And what I also hear in that is like peace is not possible unless we do reckon with those nervous system triggers, unless we reckon with the unhealed places
Yeah.
where that are kind of getting in the way of peace. I mean, that was for me, like I didn't like magically all my pieces of my heart came online. It
Yeah.
was like deep inner child, like wounds just bleeding open. Like it was hard.
Yeah.
And to be so like, quote unquote triggered so many times, like my childhood wounds, like the person with whom I'm now, spending time, my relational, my girlfriend, whatever, however you want to describe, I don't love labels, but
Mm-hmm.
um, having to reckon with like her anger and like what that anger brought up in me. And there was just so much that I had to really tease out in order to really get on the other side of that, which is, oh, peace is possible. And it looks really messy to get there.
Yeah. Totally.
Right? I think people are prioritizing comfort and thinking
Mm-hmm.
that's the route to peace,
Yeah.
but it's the opposite.
Yeah. It requires we like look at all of our dark, shadowy parts that we've kind of shoved into the corners and the nooks and crannies and like bring it out into the light and be like, what is here? How can I release this? How can I transform this? And yeah, I would love to live in a world where everyone has access to therapists and healing circles and ayahuasca and plant medicine and community care and yeah, it is a journey and a process, but it requires that we really commit to looking at the places that maybe we've been taught to ignore and suppress and also I think it's worth remembering like we don't have to do it alone. We
Mm-mm.
can link arms and go into the
Mm.
dark together with our flashlights, and it makes it a lot easier.
Like there's just no way I could have done it alone for sure.
Yeah.
And when I think about just the moments like because I've done a lot of inner child healing, I've had to because of the ways that my nervous system had been reacting to all of the different stimulus over the last several months. It's like my inner child was just going, I mean, she was sounding the alarm, she was freaking out. And now on the other side of all of this, it's like she's resting, she's like chilling.
Mm,
Like it's just so beautiful, right? But again, that piece has only been through really having the courage to acknowledge like I want to live a life that is more peaceful, more loving. Like I don't want to know where the fucking escape hatch is in my
yeah.
relationship. I want to be able to just be present with the person that I'm
Mm,
with. And like that can only happen if the parts of ourselves, as you described, like if they are being seen, acknowledged, if their needs are being met, if
Yeah,
they are being like given airtime and given, you
totally.
know,
Shown other ways of connecting and being in a relationship. But
yeah,
yeah, yeah, it's a process and it definitely doesn't happen overnight.
it's so fucking hard.
Yeah.
I'm like, spoiler, it's the worst.
Yeah. The worst
And
and the best
it's the worst and
simultaneously.
the best. It's
Yeah.
like that was a really hard several months. Like
Yeah.
that was so hard. And I wouldn't take back any of it because who I am today is like I can love in a way that I've never loved before. And
Mm.
and again, it wasn't just the last few months, but that was kind of like that was the container for whatever reason that everything kind of came to a head and it's beautiful. So peace is possible, y'all.
Totally. And the
It
obstacle
is.
is the path.
And what?
The obstacle is the path.
I
My
know.
friend always says that to me when I'm like really struggling. It's like, yeah, but this is the challenges are like when we move through them, like that's where we learn the deepest lessons and where we grow. And I always think, yeah, it's like how can we really just know that we have to get creative and learn to move through the challenging parts and we're going to be stronger on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like all of the people in my life that see the obstacle and kind of go another direction. Like,
Totally. It's like,
okay,
okay, nope, there's an obstacle. I'm
yeah,
gonna go sit on
yeah.
the couch.
Like I'll take comfort and safety for 100, like
Yeah.
it's normal and there's no shame in that. And also if we want a different experience,
We
it's
have
going to
to
require
doing
some
different things. Yeah.
something
Showing up
else,
differently. Yeah.
something different. So
Exciting.
Aria, you're so wonderful. Thank you for being here. Inevitably, people will want to be a part and tell us a little bit more about your community. Like, how can people find you? And this will also be in the show notes.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm on Instagram, Aria_Diana. I publish a weekly Substack newsletter called Navigating Non-Monogamy, and I love to write to give solicited advice. So if people have questions, please write to me and I'll maybe write you an essay in response. I lead a group coaching program called Nourishing Non-Monogamy every spring and every fall. That's a 12-week online journey where you can be in community with other intentional relationship explorers, where we deconstruct monogamy, where we dream about new possibilities. We do breath work and parts work experiences to heal those younger parts. We have a lot of time and space to practice new communication skills and map our nervous systems. And it's basically everything that I wish I had 13 years ago when I started on this journey. And it's absolutely a joy to hold that space. I also have an event series in Oakland, California called Courageous Conversations, where we come together and share stories in a structured format and really create a space where people who are practicing non-monogamy and polyamory can belong and share parts of themselves that they often keep hidden from the default world.
Hmm.
And then I also offer one-on-one and couples and triads polycule coaching work. So if people are trying to relate in new ways and having a hard time, would love to chat with you.
You seem like you would be such like a wonderful person to like bring into that experience because you just seem so grounded in just knowing what's needed. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's such a joy to hold space for people and help kind of point out some of the obstacles that maybe they don't even know exist or they can't see coming on the path. And it's like, maybe let's take a little redirect here, or what about this? And
Mhm.
yeah, it's the best. I'm having so much fun and yeah, would
Uh,
love to hear from anyone who's questioning everything.
as most of us are in this climate, right? But
Yeah.
Aria, thank you so much for being here. You are such a gift, and thank you for the work that you're doing. And just would maybe love to have you back sometime down the road.
Would love that. So good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here for this conversation with Aria Diana. I have so many takeaways. I couldn't possibly pick one. But in this moment, I'm just feeling really struck by the beauty with which Aria describes our ability to choose. We get to choose how we love, when we love, what that looks like. We get to do that from a place of consent when we understand all of the options and choices available to us. And I just love her ability to bring in this component of like, how do we let go of our conditioning, let go of our trauma responses in service of loving in the ways that feel the most right for us, and moving out from that place. It's so beautiful to connect with her. If you yourself want to connect with Aria or join any of her communities, I invite you to do so. All of her information is in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with me, my information is in the show notes as well. But for now, be still, my friends, and live into your impact. I am so grateful you're here, and I'll talk with you soon.